What's up, everybody? I'm back, and this is my review of episode 4 of Convicting a Murderer, the rebuttal series to Netflix's Making a Murderer, and this is what it states this episode is about. The missing 15 seconds from the dispatch call that was used as proof of police bias against Steven Avery is revealed. Steven Avery's behavior prior to Teresa Halbach's murder becomes increasingly concerning. And then they air a clip with Candy, and she states that she believes Steven Avery did it because Teresa Halbach didn't like Steven the way that he wanted Teresa to like him. They air an old call with Jody saying he killed her because she turned him down. Earl Avery says part of him doesn't want to believe he did it, but part of him believes he did do it, and he did it because he thought he could get away with it. He thinks, and Earl states he does think Steven is guilty. Jody says that Steven thought that he was untouchable. Candace thinks that Steven was mad over the 18 years that he spent in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Thinks that he did this because he thought that one woman was going to have to pay for that. Candace states that people think the Avery salvage yard is a tourist spot because a lot of people go there and take pictures in front of the signs, etc. Now, could it be that, and I'm sure some people do go and do that, or could it be that the large groups of people that meet outside of the Avery salvage yard, that's the place that they can go show support that is going to get the most attention? And if that is their idea, to go there and get the most attention, it worked because these guys put it in this documentary, giving them more attention. Then they talk about how the photo shoot for the vehicle was in Yonda, which is Steven Avery's sister. Now, somebody posted a link on Twitter, and I wish I could find it. If you're watching this video, repost the link under this video. And I'm not saying this is correct, not saying it has anything to do with it, but it was an interesting piece of information. It states that in Wisconsin, or at least in that area, you can only sell 5 used cars or 5 cars without a license. Maybe they didn't have a license, and maybe he was using his sister's name to kind of like circumvent the system so that he could sell another car. Or it was because the vehicle, it was actually a van, not a car, the vehicle was actually owned by Yonda. Barb, who was Steven Avery's sister, Brendan Dassey's mother. That could be the other reason why the photo shoot was put in her name. Now, Candace Owens states she believes that Teresa Halbach wouldn't have come if Steven Avery used his own name because she was freaked out over the alleged towel incident. Jerry Buting in court states he could have just called her directly because he had Teresa Halbach's direct phone number. Then they air an interview with Brenda, who is the producer of Convicting a Murderer, and states that Steven Avery didn't call Teresa Halbach directly because he didn't want that direct connection, which that part makes absolutely no sense. Of course you want that direct connection. You want to limit any other people involved in this crime at all. They allege that he also invited Brendan Dassey to take part in this crime as well. But however, so she states that he wouldn't want that direct connection to Teresa Halbach. That is absolutely what he would want. If his plan was to kill her, you're going to want to limit the amount of people that know about this completely. So why would you want to add more people to the crime? Why not just call her directly if your plan was to kill her? Why add more people? It makes, I'm repeating myself, it's because it makes absolutely no sense. You would call Teresa directly to get Teresa to come out here, and then that way nobody knows she was actually supposed to go there. But he called this, set up an appointment with Auto Trader, and so they absolutely know she was going to the salvage yard. You'd have to be an idiot to kill somebody who everyone knows is coming to your house or coming to your property to photograph a vehicle. Just extraordinarily strange to me. This is the big proof that Sean Reck was talking about. He tweeted me the other day and stated that he had proof that Teresa Halbach didn't know where she was going. So here's what it was. They aired a voicemail that Teresa Halbach left on Barb's answering machine stating that she didn't know if she was going. Now I'm going to explain to you why I think that is irrelevant, why that voicemail doesn't matter. Here's why. I wrote this earlier, and I'm just going to read exactly what I wrote. I put this on Twitter, at Allegedly a Show. They aired a voicemail she left. Somebody asked me what the big proof was. They aired a voicemail she left, which on its own, with no other information, can sound bad. But with all of the other info out there, it doesn't change anything at all. They proved she didn't know where she was going at that precise moment in time. But she found out a short while later anyway where she was going, so it makes that voicemail meaningless. As soon as she got the address, Avery Road, she knew where she was going. And at that point in time, if she was that fearful, that uncomfortable, that concerned about running into Steve and Avery, she wouldn't have gone. Let's just say she needed the money, and that was the reason why she had to go. She would have showed up. Steve and Avery would have came out of wherever Steve and Avery came from. He would have been like, here's the vehicle, take this picture. And Steve and Avery, being the creep that Steve and Avery is in this particular scenario, was like, come into my trailer. I've got your money inside. Okay. Teresa Halbach is going to be like, no, I'll just wait out here. You can go get my money. And she would either wait outside by her vehicle, wait somewhere on the property, or perhaps even get inside her vehicle and wait for Steve and Avery to come out and pay her. She would take the money and she would be on her merry way. That is the situation that makes the most sense to me. Now, they continue on. They talk about Steve and Avery using star 67, which I covered in another video. I won't go over that all again here. I will link that video in the description so you can go view it, of why that doesn't really mean anything either. Candace talks about how the Making a Murderer filmmakers spun facts into their favor. Every time they say this, it makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand why I do understand why they keep doing it, because they want to push their own narrative. Again, they don't know what narrative means, but they're doing this, and it's the exact same thing that they are doing. It's the whole point of every documentary that's ever been made. The creator of whatever documentary has a vision, has a narrative they're going to tell. This is just Sean Rex, the Daily Wire Pluses, Brenda's, Candace Owens, whoever else's. This is just the narrative of the story they want to tell. The Making a Murderer filmmakers had a narrative, had a story they wanted to tell, so that's what they told. Convicting a Murderer is just doing the exact same thing. They're just telling a different version of the story. It's, in their minds, this is the truth. In the filmmakers of Making a Murderer, in their minds, that was the truth. It's both someone's narrative. They really need to look up the word narrative. Brenda talks more with Steve and Avery supporters about inconsistencies in Stephen's story. They air segments from the trial. They air a clip with Teresa Halbach's mom, which is heartbreaking. And then Andy shows up. Andrew Colburn shows up in the documentary. I believe this is the first time we've seen Andy in the documentary. He talks about how he went to the Avery salvage yard to talk to Chuck, because he knows Chuck from dealing with him in the past. He says he's been a customer there and that local police use Avery salvage yard for towing, but he ran into Steve and Avery instead of Chuck. And he asked him about Teresa Halbach. Andrew talks about how he ran into Steve and Avery a few times after he was released in 2003, but Steve and Avery didn't want to talk to him. Can you blame him? He's one of the reasons why Stephen Avery had to spend even more time in prison than he had to. I wouldn't want to talk to Andy either. Candace talks about more inconsistencies. Brenda also talks with more supporters about them. Fassbender also appears a few times in this documentary, in this episode of this documentary, I should say. He's only been in it a few seconds before this. This is definitely the most he's been in. And honestly, I'm very interested to see what Thomas Fassbender and Andrew Colburn talk about in this series. He talks about inconsistencies in Stephen Avery's story. They also talk about the Zippers. Andrew Colburn states that they did find she had been to the Zippers' residence. They talk about how Stephen Avery invited investigators or detectives into his house because he had nothing to hide. That's what Stephen Avery said. One of the detectives said that he was inside Stephen Avery's house for about 5 minutes. They air a clip with Brenda, the producer, and Stephen Avery's supporters, and the convo gets a little bit heated there for a second. They air an old clip of Dave Remaker stating that he didn't think Stephen Avery had anything to do with it, and that was his gut feeling at the time. They start talking about Bobby Dassey, and they air old court clips with him. I wonder if they're going to talk anything about people's theories that Bobby Dassey could be, in a lot of people's minds, the person responsible for this. Like, there's a lot of theories out there and a lot of information that involve Bobby Dassey. I wonder if they're going to touch on that at all. I'm extremely interested in that. Candace Owens talks about how Making a Murderer edited a call that said Stephen and the Zippers were going to be re-interviewed. But in the edit, they just said Stephen Avery was going to be interviewed. Could this probably be because the focus of the doc they were making was on Stephen Avery and had nothing to do with the Zippers? That's just a guess. Why mention their name at all if they're not going to have anything to do with it? I don't know. That's just a guess on my part. They talk about Pamela, the person that found the RAV4. Candace talks about how people thought it was odd that she found it so quick. They aired old clips of people stating that she went right to the RAV4, including Jerry Buting, about how Pamela could have been working with police. Candace states Pamela didn't walk in and walk right to the RAV4. One of the case enthusiasts states that it was a natural progression, the direction Pam went to the RAV4 when she found it. It was legitimately a straight line. You can watch Pamela in court with the red dot laser gimmick. She literally, legitimately draws a straight line. She's like, we stopped here for a second. But it's a straight line to where she walked in and went right to the RAV4. It is not a natural progression at all. Candace states you would have had to known the lot to even park it where Stephen Avery parked the RAV4. Candace states you would have had to have known the Avery salvage lot well in order to park the RAV4 there. So wouldn't you have to know the lot just as well to go and look for it there? Or is it still just dumb luck? Candace talks about the call asking if Stephen Avery is already in custody. It's a call that ends episode 1 of Making a Murderer. They talk about the body-only warrant. They air the full call, which, in my opinion, really doesn't change anything. Candace talks about how it doesn't make it a bombshell with that extra 15 seconds. And like I said, that 15 seconds, in my opinion, didn't really add anything. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Do you think that extra 15 seconds of that call made it that less interesting or took away from what the Making a Murderer filmmakers were doing? I don't know. I don't think so. They talk about how Stephen Avery's dad had to talk him out of running. Now, this is just a maybe. Just a maybe. Maybe Stephen was scared because of what happened to him before. The last time he dealt with police, again, this is just a maybe. Maybe it would make sense if the cops took 18 years from you. You would be scared that they were going to do it again, and you would want to do something odd, something weird to try and avoid being sent back to prison for something that you didn't do because it already happened to you once. Again, maybe. maybe. Earl said Stephen didn't crush the car because he ran out of time. 5 days isn't enough time to crush the car. Earl goes over the different things that they would have to do in order to crush the car. That's why he thinks Stephen ran out of time. Thomas Fassbender talks about the effort that was done to conceal the car. That's got to be the worst concealment job of all time, considering how quick it was found. They air footage of a Stephen Avery supporter, Andy, who goes by Rookie online, talking about how Ken Kratz was trying to get the jury to leap from if Stephen Avery was framed. That means the cops killed Teresa Halbach. And it looks like the next episode is the episode where Andy, Rookie, gets to confront Ken Kratz. And I am extremely interested in that. Can't wait for it. Let me know what you think. It's my review of episode 4. I hope you're all having a good day, and I will see you again soon.